Each college football season, the SEC slate of conference games gives us the highest level of football we could possibly ask for, but there are always a few games that stand out as some of the best football that you've watched. And this year, I'm expecting to have a lot of games that could contend to be game of the year, not necessarily just in conference, but maybe throughout the entire sport. So I'm just going to go through today, one game each week. There's one week that has 3 games, I think. Yeah, but just games that I think had the potential to be incredibly competitive, high stakes, potential game of the years. So starting off, weeks 1 and 2 don't have any. But then week 3, when conference play really starts to kick into gear, you got Florida going to LSU. It's definitely going to be Death Valley at night, so you know the atmosphere is going to be really incredible. You have Lagway versus Nussmeier in a battle of 2 of the projected top QBs in the conference. This series, Florida and LSU, has some of the craziest endings and just most competitive games, really, of any rivalry in the SEC. You think back to last year, Florida knocking LSU out of the playoff just about. A few years ago when Jaden Daniels, I think, threw for 300 and ran for 200 in what was actually a pretty close game for most of the time in Baton Rouge. Joe Burrow throwing a pick 6 in Gainesville. The Florida's goal line stop on Darius Guice. There's just so many of these games that come down to the wire, and I think this year could give us the exact same thing. And added stakes for LSU, they have that game with that week 1 game on the road at Clemson. If they lose that game, you come back home, you get a cupcake in week 2. They play LA Tech at home. But then when Florida walks in there, like, you really can't afford to lose that game and start 1 and 2. You're behind the 8 ball. Losing your first conference game for both teams is bad, but for LSU it feels like it'd be worse. They're more expected to make a run to Atlanta. But this could be a very massive game for LSU. It's a big game for both, but it could be a must-win for LSU, I should say, based on how that week 1 goes. So that's the first one. Week 4, Auburn at Oklahoma. The biggest storyline here, obviously, is that Jackson Arnold is going back to Norman, this time wearing an Auburn Tigers uniform. And both of these are teams that I think are really undervalued. I like them both to have a shot at making the playoff. I like Oklahoma a little bit more, I think. 2 offenses with absolutely explosive potential. You look at Auburn, they have Arnold at quarterback, obviously, and then some elite receivers like Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton. And for Oklahoma, you have John Mateer, quarterback, Jaden Ott at running back, and a plethora of receivers that Mateer can throw the ball to. And we know that this game won't be at noon. It'll be either in the afternoon or at night, so the environment will be in. This could be maybe a sleepy college game day pick. I don't know what other games are going on in week 4 off the top of my head, so I can't quite give that for you. But Auburn will have the benefit of having already played a road game to this point because they opened the year off at Baylor, and Oklahoma will have already been tested at home by Michigan. So both teams are coming in, like, they'll know who they are. They'll know what they have to work on. This won't necessarily be a breaking in process. I just think it's going to be a very competitive game, and these are 2 teams that I think are sleepers, like I said, to make the playoff and maybe even make a run in the SEC. So week 4, we'll know which one of those teams is real and which one's not quite going to live up to those expectations. Week 5, potential for game of the year is Alabama at Georgia. This is going to be 2 of the top teams in the country, definitely 2 of the top teams in the SEC. It's a rematch of last year's classic in Tuscaloosa. And the thing I'm most excited for here, first off, is going to be a night game. But we haven't gotten to see Athens as like a real electric home environment in a while because they haven't had a home game in years where they've been threatened. I think back to when Tennessee was number 1. They had Hendon Hooker at quarterback. They went into Athens, and that place was an insane asylum. It was crazy, and Georgia won that game, obviously. I think back also to a few years ago, Arkansas was undefeated going in there, and Georgia was also undefeated. And that Arkansas game was a noon kick. And the Georgia crowd was loud enough to force, I think, back-to-back false starts to keep Arkansas pinned down. You know, it was like a stop for no gain, sack, incompletion, blocked punt for a safety. Like, that's just what happens when this Georgia crowd has a reason to get loud and really show up. So having Alabama there early in the season, comparing their schedules, Bama will be off a bye, and so will Georgia. Georgia will have already had an SEC game. They go to Tennessee. Bama, this will be their first conference game. So that one's also going to be a big game, future implications-wise, because these are both teams that want to make the playoff. They're both teams that want to go to Atlanta to play for a conference championship. and whichever one of them has to lose one of their first conference games in week 5. So this is really a slingshot game for the winner of it to really propel them forward and put them in a great spot. And for the loser, it's possible they lose their margin for error really for the rest of the season. Moving on now. Week 6, we get Texas at Florida. Arch Manning versus DJ Lagway. Sort of the hunters in Florida versus the hunted in Texas near the top of the conference. This is kind of similar to what I've been saying about the environments sort of helping to produce these games of the year. You're going to get the swamp, either afternoon or night kick, with Texas in there. And based on how the schedules turn out, this could be the ultimate bounce back spot for Florida because their schedule is, after their 2 cupcakes to begin the year, it's at LSU, at Miami, bye, and then this Texas game. I do predict that Florida will win at least one of those road games, but let's just say that they don't. Let's say that they win their first 2 and then drop their next 2 on the road and have to sit at home for 2 weeks at 2-2, knowing that your margin for error is really dropping. Then they come out for that Texas game at home, knowing this is our chance to make a statement against an elite team on our home turf, protect our field, and get a win. They're going to come out swinging. I mean, this is an ultimate spot for Florida. And looking at the spot for Texas, they're also coming off a bye week, and their only test will have been at Ohio State in week 1. So if they lose that game, Texas does, then they have 3 cupcakes to kind of get ready, all at home, bye week, then they go to Florida. And the good news for Texas here is that with that week 1 game at Ohio State, Arch will have played in a loud road environment as a starter already, rather than Florida being his first experience with that. So that will help Texas a lot. Just kind of help them maintain the nerves and know what to expect. But this game could be an absolute classic in Gainesville. Week 7, I've got another Texas game. It's the Red River rivalry. Obviously, just for its own reasons, this game's going to be a must-watch because of how this game plays out every season. The biggest reason that I put it on there is that it's kind of a chance for Oklahoma to prove me right. I am very high on Oklahoma. If you missed my previews before, I have them going 10-2 overall, 6-2 in conference. So this is really the game where they can prove me right, and they can prove to the entire country that they're legit. With all the transfer portal ads that they made this year, it's a chance for Venables to show that he is capable of running this program at an elite level after an underwhelming last season. And it has potential to be a must-win game, effectively, for Texas. I talked about the Ohio State game and the Florida games already. Those are both very hard road games. Let's say Texas drops both of those because you're dealing with a first-year starter at quarterback who's young, some other question marks. They could easily lose, I won't say easily, but it's realistic that they lose both of those games on the road. Then they go to the Cotton Bowl against an Oklahoma team where if they lose that game, they're 3-3 with 2 conference losses before they even get to the halfway point. Or at the halfway point, rather. Like, this could be a must-win for Texas. And for Oklahoma, I mean, it's really the ultimate prove-it game to show that they're legit. So the implications of this game, beyond obviously just the basic of the rivalry and what it could be like, it could be a pseudo-playoff game this year because it could totally determine how both these teams play out in the race for the SEC. Also in Week 7 is Georgia at Auburn because you're getting Jordan Hare at night. With Georgia walking in there, an Auburn team that I believe really can be scary, which I talked about before. Auburn gets a bye week before this game, and this is kind of similar to the spot with Florida hosting Texas, because in the 3 weeks prior to this Georgia game, Auburn is at Oklahoma, at A&M, then they're bye, and they host Georgia. My predictions actually do have Auburn losing both of those games, so let's say I'm right about that. They come into this Georgia game having not won a game in 27 days and having not played a home game in 27 days. If that team doesn't come out swinging, Hugh Freeze should be fired on the spot. But I think that they will come out swinging and give Georgia an incredible game if they don't win it. In Georgia's case, they have Alabama and Kentucky at home before they go to Auburn, so they'll have come off 2 straight games. Auburn will have the rest advantage. They're getting them at home. And, I mean, these games have just been absolute classics in the past. If you think back to Nick Marshall throwing up the prayer at Jordan Hare all those years ago, like, these games just produce energy and electric finishes. Moving on now into Week 12, Texas at Georgia. Same thing with the Alabama game. This is another chance for Georgia to really flex their home field advantage and how loud that place can really get when there's a legitimate opponent in front of them that can actually threaten their team. Georgia could easily be undefeated at this game. I predict they will be. Their hardest games are that Alabama game at Auburn. They'll have to get by Florida and Tennessee, but Georgia could very easily, and I think they should be, 9-0 going into this game, hosting a Texas team that, like I said before, they could be desperate. They could be on the ropes with no room for error with maybe 2 or 3 losses. And obviously it's a rematch of the SEC championship from last year. I do have Texas winning this game in my preseason predictions, but that won't take anything away from the environment that'll be there, at least pregame. And if Texas does go in there and win this game against an undefeated Georgia team, then it absolutely would belong on this Game of the Year list. So then there's a couple of other games that I thought had cases to be potential Game of the Years, but didn't quite make a final cut. I have South Carolina at LSU Week 7. Carolina really could be 5-0 at this point going into Baton Rouge. You have both teams coming off a bye. 2 great offenses. It'll be a great environment for LSU. That one could be an awesome game. I also have Oklahoma at South Carolina in Week 8 because these are both teams. I'll talk about Oklahoma, Auburn earlier. 2 sleepers in the SEC that when they play each other, you'll know which one is real and which one's fake. And at this point of the year, my prediction is Oklahoma is 6-0. This would be the first game they lose. Yes, I have Oklahoma losing this game to South Carolina, but it could be 6-0 at 5-1, and just a really high level matchup between 2 ranked teams. Next is the Iron Bowl, really just for obvious reasons. And if Auburn's as good as I think they could be, and Bama doesn't fall off a cliff, which I don't think they will, this could effectively be a playoff game. This could be a game to, prevent your 3rd loss. This could be even a game to get to Atlanta if there's enough parity in the league this year. And then finally is LSU at Oklahoma to end the year, because this could be a game who decides, which team gets to go to Atlanta. Both these teams, I think, can be contenders in the conference race, and if it's close at the end, getting one more win for either team and maybe a tiebreaker over the other could easily just be the deciding factor of whether you get to the SEC championship game or not. And just in general, it's going to be an elite offensive matchup, Nussmeier versus Mateer, and all the weapons that both teams have. That's going to be an incredible game to watch. So those are the games that I believe could be instant classics this fall in the SEC. Obviously, we'll have some other games that I didn't bring up between maybe lesser teams that are just chaotic finishes at the end, but obviously excited for another year of college football in the SEC and look forward to these games.